Into a Wider Galaxy, Part 506. Herbert's 100 Harem and Herald of Red Blades. Barisi answers the door and looks up. There is a moment's pause. Harold is basically Herbert if he had the choice in things, and she's embraced by her husband's clone. Good to see you, Barisi. Sorry sorry for leaving so quickly before. I was still sorting my head, Harold says with a smile. He breaks off the hug and looks down at her. He had only seen her a little bit before things were just too much on his side. But now, he was fine. I can understand that. It can be painful knowing that your memories and feelings for someone can't be reciprocated. So I had to get moving, Harold says. We know it's just still kind of awkward all around, but I've made a fair number of changes to myself, so things should be smooth now. And speaking of changes, would you care to meet your sisters-in-law? Harold asks. I would, the blue-tinged Zedden says with a smile. Then out of seemingly nowhere, an enormous Great Desert Nagasha in face paint, but not more than that, slithers around the corner. Her scales are night black, and her face has Barisi, wondering if maybe... So you're Barisi, the girl who saw an impossible problem and found an answer anyways? It's wonderful to meet you, Giria asks, and Barisi is momentarily stunned before accepting the embrace. So that's what Herbert really thinks of her? Oh, she's so young, a Metak gushes after flitting onto Giria's shoulder. I'm Javra, the glider gutter. Which one of you girls is Amira? Yzma was a hoot and a half of a huntress, and I want to meet her granddaughter. I am, Ymira asks, and Javra rubs her eyes. Is something wrong? I can't tell you all apart. The patterns of the chitin and the slight hue differences are the species tells. Beyond that, you need to read the axiom in their crests and pay attention to size and behavior, Harold says before turning to two nearer Jadine. Isn't that right, Hijika? Lula? You can still tell them apart? My meditations. It does more than help with axiom control. It helps with memory, Harold says. Anyways, dear sisters-in-law, Giria Devastation, my first wife, descendant of primal Lady Thessalia. Javra, the glider gutter hunter of megafauna from Lacrin 297. Dumia, the forge mistress of the fierce feather tribes, another Lacrin 297 native. Uma Traz, her family has successfully created a two-headed warform. Agatha Snarlmane of the Crimson Hewers. Enough said for how dangerous that makes her. We also have calculated velocity of victory, first Vishonian to have a natural child, which brings me to our child together in the form of Little Miracle. We also have unending reign of retribution standing beside them. My adoptive daughter and the surprisingly shy Osadub is Winifred Barabelle Stein, my latest wife and the connoisseur who's helped me with the part of the meal I brought over to share. My dear family, meet my brother's family. We have over 200 names to go through. Oh boy, is there even going to be time to eat? Rain asks. We can just do the introductions on the spot, young lady, Barisi says with a smile. I'm older than you. Still my niece, one of Herbert's wives calls out. Hey, Harold, get over here. We need to set out your contributions to the table. Herbert calls from the next room over. Why won't you come over here? Say hello to your in-laws and nieces. I am forbidden from casual teleportation or running along the heads and shoulders of my wives. And I can't make that jump without slamming into someone, Herbert calls over. Excuses. I know you have other ways to get around. Yes, but I want to talk to you really quick first, and was trying to be subtle about it. We're off the clock. Subtle can hang. True, front and center too tall. We need to talk. All right, everyone, this is what I was referring to. Excuse me, please, Harold says as he reverses his gravity slowly and drifts up and lands gently on the ceiling to walk along and head into the next room. I mean, really, it's an embassy with Zedden and Yaoya sensibilities. Of course, heavy mobility is part of it. We're expected to climb all over. When you drop subtlety, you really drop the subtlety. Well, yeah, I'm the fighter between the two of us. Oh, please, like we both don't qualify as extremely dangerous. I don't know. There are a lot of people out there that are likely more humoring us than actually fighting us, Harold says. The big brawl I had on Zalwar was called on account of equipment malfunction. Cutting a depleted matter weapon head and having it slowly expand as it tries to explode is not a mere equipment failure. It was equipment and it failed. Equipment failure. There's such a thing as too much simplification. So that big fight thing was real? One of the Yaoya calls up. It was. The Floric have males too? But they're plants. Plants have the parts needed. Yeah, but all on the same Kriya entity, all on the same living thing. If anything, the Floric should be both male and female at the same time. Another notes. Very true. But if the galaxy followed the same rules all the time, then none of our species would be similar. There's something in the code of the galaxy which makes things fit. Only Slobes and the Orhana's ancients seem to be exceptions. And Slobes present as being male or female, with the ancients being non-aware entities. Maybe it's something to do with injury? Rain calls into the conversation. Think about it. How do you stop a plant from reproducing? You take the part out. Maybe they start as both, but eventually always hurt themselves in a way that makes them focus on being one or the other. Then the gender ration wouldn't be the same as the rest of the galaxy, and from the looks of the demographics, the building conversation dies as Harold crosses the threshold into the massive dining room. So we need privacy for this? Minimal, but it is needed. We setting or making an example? Harold asks. Setting. La'Aperin has requested respectfully to know where I am when I'm off duty. They claim it's because they trust me as an ambassador, but it also has the benefit of knowing when a powerful asset is on and off the field. I got it, Harold says before scanning the room. I take it the new decor is where the tracking devices are? Yep, they don't get to know everything, but with the diplomatic situation, with them being what it is, yeah, okay, so nothing private or confidential. Got it. Why are they being so nosy? They've called me First Blade of the Undaunted. That title has meaning. That title means that according to their own traditions, I'm the one they need to watch as much, if not more, than Admiral Cistern. Geez, that suggests a society where daggers are an essential fashion choice, Harold remarks. Yep, Herbert replies while stretching. Come on, help set the table and we can keep talking. Of course now. Harold begins to talk before suddenly adjusting his step to dodge the Paris that had arrived. It grabs onto his ankle and loses its grip on his pants while he steps away. Then comes the whining chitter and Harold sighs. He picks up the pale green and dark purple little creature and lets it wrap itself around his waist. Rounder's still a complete suck-up, I see. It's a universal constant, like gravity and taxes. Pretty sure it used to be death and taxes, Harold remarks. You had something to say about that Saint Redblade, Herbert says before Harold approaches the table, holding all the food, and starts pulling out stasis-trapped dishes out of his jacket's expanded pocket and placing them where he can find room. Several types of pasta, a large basket of freshly baked bread, a vegetable salad, a fruit platter, and a board of sliced meats, and a large mushroom risotto. That is huge, Herbert notes at the sight of the risotto. Winifred discovered it earlier today, and she had to struggle to not simply eat it all as we were making it. So considering how much she's going to have, it's about the same size as the others. I'm surprised you didn't bring... There's the pizza, Herbert remarks as Harold starts placing out several. There's more to Italian food than pasta and pizza. Yeah, and there's more to French than pastries and snails and frogs, Herbert remarks. Also, we have a scheduled appointment. For what? Harold asks. Alpha and Omega want to fight us. See if we have proper teamwork and combat instincts, Herbert explains, and Harold pauses. Considers and then opens his mouth to speak. Herbert cuts him off. Yes, I told them about your training under the Lady of War. I told them about the bullshit you've pulled. They know. They had hard copies of the reports on hand. They are still completely certain that you need more training. In what? In fighting like you're there to win and not like you're there to show off, Herbert says before pausing. That's a carpaccio. I improvised with slow-cooked landrack meat. It's pretty good. Very nice. But I've been using my authority to look into Alpha and Omega. They were pulling the kind of things we've been pulling while on Earth, granted at a smaller scale. But we've been dipping our toes into their pool, and now they're asking if we want to actually start swimming. Harold notes before smiling. Good. If we have such powerful opponents right at home, then we can test ourselves against them. Iron sharpens iron. Yeah, maybe so. But we can't let it get in the way of our duties. Duties to the undaunted, to our family and ourselves. No point in getting all the combat skill in existence if you have nothing to fight for. Well, yeah, duh, Harold says. I know you know. I'm just getting ahead of the common bits we see in people getting obsessive about this. I don't need you running off to become some kind of insane combat monk. I might run off to try and fistfight one, but otherwise no. You're stuck with me. Good, because I have some ideas. Oh? Yeah, we need some muscle that can vanish soonish, Herbert says, glancing towards the gifts from La'abaran. Got it, Harold says as he also eyeballs the device with hidden camera. To be fair, that is a beautiful piece of work. Some kind of compass? One the size of a dinner plate made of brass and semi-precious. An astrolabe of Earth, calculated to the time of the Dauntless's launch. What? Yeah. I had to look up what an astrolabe even is. It's an analog star char based off of Earth's northern hemisphere. That's incredible. The damn things date back to the Byzantium Empire and Islamic Golden Age. It's hand-carved and functional. That's showing off. They like to show off. La'abaran or the Ibu in general? Both. La'abaran herself is an Ibu, and so her empire follows her sensibilities. And when she moves, she either expects submission or awe, and she makes a point of trying to inspire both. Okay, so why was our introduction to them when La'abaran declared Tot Admiral Cistern would be hers? She is required by decorum to make a grand statement at least once a year. Follow-up isn't required, and La'abaran is just going through the motions, so it hasn't come to a head. Until the Vish started attacking. Yeah, that, Harold begins before they both sense movement and turn. They quickly finish setting the serving table and head for the door. Apparently, Miracle was feeling a little overwhelmed and had let out a wail that had caused several of Herbert's sons to let out wails of their own. Everyone was being shushed and comforted, but it's still a near thing with the babies. Sorry for the wait, I needed to have a chat with Harold. Food's ready, Herbert says in a soft tone that carries but doesn't wake the babes. That's a new trick, Harold says in a whisper. You'll pick it up quick, Herbert assures him as people start heading into the room. I see some new dishes in there. Anything you recommend? Ambassador Helena asks as she pauses in the flow of people heading into the dining room. Try the carpaccio there. I made it with Lanrak steaks cooked low and slow, Harold offers. Into a Wider Galaxy, Part 507. Harriet the Spy. Excuse me, she states in a high nasal tone as she rushes up to the group and the bodyguards move into a defensive formation around the famous man. She stops a respectful distance away. Hello, Caloral Sneedley with 1287 News. I was hoping to speak with you, Mr. Doodoo. Woo. I am Observer Woo. Really? It says here that your name is Dodo Damien. Woo, pronounced phonetically as Doodoo. That is wrong. It is pronounced with the do sound, but softer and smoother. If you must use a name other than my family name, then use Damien. It is easier for Wyran to understand and pronounce. Oh, that's an interesting term. What is Wyran? She asks. It means outsider in my native language. You are not familiar with and do not have the training to speak my language. So please use the secondary name I have legally acquired to deal with this situation, although I would prefer formal address as Observer Woo. All right then, Damien. I have a few questions to ask you, human, mostly about questions, she says, and she can see a little annoyance creep into his face. Firstly, you've gone from world to world asking about what people think about humanity. Is this some sort of weird flirting method? I understand humans have a lot backwards, but is that really the best way to flirt? I am not flirting with my interviewees. I have several questions of import to the governments of Earth and ask them as part of my standard array of inquiry to satisfy this curiosity. Once the standard weapons are dealt with, more individualistic questions can be asked. But in general, I allow the other party to speak as candidly as possible so that an unvarnished and unfiltered view of the situation may be attained. Observer Wu says in a professional tone. Really? So you have in fact deleted all the poon pictures from Electric Mama? Kalaral asks, and there is a pause. Who told you of that? Observer Wu demands. Have you, or have you not? Kalaral begins before pausing as weapons are raised. Have you been hacking my files? Are you one of the infiltrators that have attacked my ship? Observer W demands. That is not a proper answer to the... Kalaral begins before seeing right down the barrel of a rifle and freezing. She's quickly bundled to the side and away from the public view. The moment they're out of sight, Kalaral speaks in a very different voice. That took too much provocation for you to get out of public. Observer Wu, you are heading into danger and need to divert your path immediately. She says in a deeper, smoother voice that has none of the nasal inflection of before. Who are you? I'm on your list of interviewees for when you start interrogating intelligence. She answers. Harriet Dubois. Correct. Now you need to turn around and leave. I'm juggling several different secret societies that are laying ambushes up ahead. I am under a disguise as an over-eager and stupid member of one of them that gets assigned the scut work. Now listen, you need to storm off in disgust and leave the area for you to not only stay safe, but to maintain my operational security. Do you understand? Is the whole planet like this? Yes. The whole planet is a series of intermingling hot zones from one conspiracy to the next. The only upside is that they're running into each other so much that most of them never get anything done, Harriet says. We clearly need to have that interview sooner rather than later. Not possible. My schedule is very carefully balanced between all the different groups of crazy women with 100 different faces and voices and names. Our interview comes at its scheduled time and not before. And before you ask, no, I can't cut into personal time. I need that to untangle myself and stay sane after this endless game of nonsense. You get to talk to me in 3 days. Understood. Thank you for your assistance, Agent Dubois. Just get moving. We have precious little time now, Harriet states. Then she takes on the persona of Kalaral again. Understand? Moments later, Observer Wu and his guard are stiffly marching away from the annoying woman as she gives pursuit. No one is exactly running, but it's a near thing. But what about the allegations of... Kalaral calls after them before tripping and falling into a heap. There is a slight pause in the tactical retreat of the observer and his retinue, but they only pause. They quickly keep going again as Kalaral starts whining about her sprained ankle. There is a pause as several groups all want to make a move on her, but don't want to get into a fight. Not that it matters. The hidden camera her handler had arranged caught all of them. After a few minutes, as she staggers to her feet and begins trudging away, dejected, she's eventually intercepted by a literally flaming, mad fire Aramenta. What the flame was that? Who are you and what made you think that? She begins to rant before a snick claw finds its way over her shoulder, and a snick woman with clear cloaken heritage fades into view. Her fluffy, bright hair stands out almost as brightly as the woman who is literally on fire. Kalaral, we need to talk, the clearly unhappy snick says, and Kalaral swallows audibly. Yes, ma'am, she whispers. Scene change. Private office of Bazalash, the unrepentant order, Centris orbit. She was going over the latest bit of evidence, looking over and double-checking for legal loopholes. As she is being tried in absentia, Bazalash is ensuring that every possible legal argument in defense can be accounted for. The work is tedious, and due to the endless amounts of demands upon her time, always slow. But in cases where the perpetrator is safely contained, then slow works best. It allows for proper thoroughness. She then receives an email and she raises an eyebrow. Additional information. Another organization to the long list of criminal gangs that had been supported in part or in full by Juliet Comet. The law of Centris was clear in these matters. So long as a person is funding an organization, they bear some amount of the guilt of its illegal activities. It was less clear on whether or not they retained that level of responsibility when they lost contact or stopped funding the organization. Precedent went both ways in Centris space, which is rendering judgment so difficult. The lack of unified legal code in the many differing jurisdictions was a mess. There was even disagreement as to what proper conduct was in between the jurisdiction. It defaulted to laneway law currently, But laneway law has protections and considerations that only work in laneways. And by the logic of the laneways, no one who so much as touched a powered vehicle and system wasn't some kind of criminal. But on the books, law between spires and plates was laneway laws, which meant everyone who wasn't traveling at laneway speeds, which was everyone, was in massive violation for not only impeding galactic commerce, but endangering the lives of others. She takes in a deep breath and lets it out. She's been to Centris before. She can handle this. It is an unceasing torrent of annoyance now as before, which means she can handle it. It just never ceased to amaze her how they always found some new, absurd shape for the knotted and frayed legal code to take, and never the same form twice. Perhaps Rikaxa was doing this to spite her? Not likely, but not entirely out of the grounds of possibility. No, not her style. Maybe one or several of her daughters? They occasionally came up with the most bizarre schemes to impress their mother. With that train of thought niggling through her mental thoroughfare, she activates a side app of her data slate and sees that Halisa is practicing physically, twisting around a practice pillar that is designed to be fragile and bending. It's an exercise of strength in keeping herself off the mats and of control. If she grips it too hard, the magnets keeping the pillar upright lose grip with each other, and she has to reset it. It was important for explorers to move through terrain delicately, but with purpose. It was excellent exercise for those with more powerful tails. Jaltraki had enjoyed the exercise, made a point of mastering it, and several others about delicate movement. He wanted to save and uplift people, so he needed to move with gentle care that belied the enormous strength he naturally possessed as a primal. I may need to induce a cutoff point in the gathered evidence. More and more information keeps coming, and with the sheer weight of evidence against her, and lack of justification or proper defense no matter how much I look. She dislikes leaving anything unverified or unexplored. But the sheer weight of evidence against her is painting a long and brutal life full of crimes, from white-collar crimes that later on went to red-collar crimes as she covered up her enormous amounts of fraud and laundering with increasing amounts of murder. Also, she had gone into black-collar crimes and had several judges bribed or bought. She had pressed for each named judge to be thoroughly investigated, and half of them were already removed from office as the evidence had grown against them. A few more were trying to leave on good terms, but the media was doing good for once and had framed it as them trying to flee the scene of the crime. "Enter," she says before they can even ask. "Jalasi, what have you found?" Miss Comet had numerous contingencies in place. One went off and we used it to track down the others. Apparently she's a rather spiteful sort, as several of these contingencies included assassination contracts and bombs. Yalasi explains and Bazalash nods. Are the laws really that strict? Miss Comet is a citizen of Centris Plate, the Tempstua Plate. They have a very high standard of evidence to adhere to. Surely we have enough to prosecute. There is more than enough evidence for numerous sentences. However, the case is simply incomplete without the full story. Granted, we have already reached the point where we cannot pile on further punishments without inventing new ones by tempestual law. However, an alert comes up in her data slate, another email, requesting to speak with her in regards to galactic law from Observer Wu. She considers it, then sends the lecture she had prepared ahead of time when she had heard about the Observer going about the galaxy. Until this moment, she had placed the very memory of it out of her head. It had been a simple chore and finished with ease. She had even geared the lecture to make things as clear as possible. Apologies. The humans desire to know about galactic law. I have answered them. Now then, the issue with inventing new punishments by Tempstua law is that my own position as a judge runs off very specific understandings. I know. You enforce existing law. You do not alter them. Correct. However, this case has gone to such a level of law-breaking in sheer scope and scale that it is beginning to cross the threshold of becoming an exception. What do you need, my lady? Merely the details of these contingencies. With that, I can make the decision as to whether or not to request permission to enact new rulings and set a standard of behavior. Goddess I may be, I, as all beings are as well, am not above the law. There is a proper form to things. Now please, Jalasi, what are her contingencies? How did Miss Comet plan to bring pain and sorrow to others from potentially beyond the grave? A public release of classified information has gone out. Through it, several judges already removed from office now have their scandals even more public, and an additional 3 have had their dirty laundry publicly aired mid-prosecution. We traced it back to its source and found a small warehouse with several drones going through automated motions. The next contingency to go out would have been a firebombing of her former corporate office, using dangerous dirty chemicals no less, so it would count as poisoning as well. Even humans would be well suited to stay a good distance away from the fluorine-based explosives. I see. Catalog the rest. I need to speak to the Chief Justices. This has gone truly beyond previously set precedents. Into a Wider Galaxy, Part 508, Harriet the Spy. The moment she enters the apartment, she walks around, musses some things up, drops the semi-competently planted bugs in specific locations, and runs a bath. As it fills, she calculates what she needs. She then finishes things up and teleports away into another apartment and quickly begins changing. Makeup, wig, a bit of a tighter bra, then is strictly comfortable, and she switches out most of her outfit. Me. I am Tirita. Tirita. Yes, Tirita is my name, and you best not forget it. There is so much interesting news to bring. She leaves the apartment excitedly, almost at a scramble as she moves through the city. She arrives at the secret entrance and is pulled inside by Genshina before anything can happen. Have you heard? The Nagasha demands in shock. Heard what? I just got here. I was infiltrating other groups. What happened? The fun part about the purple perceivers is that they were both paranoid and gullible. A bit of asking for training to be sent out and spy for them, and they had helped her infiltrate other groups and helped make excuses for her. The tri-tight lady is altering local law. That never happens. There's only a dozen or so prior examples. If it's happened a dozen times before, then it has happened, so it didn't never happen, and I think I confused myself. What's happening? Is it something to do with that big case she was working on with the Metak supercriminal? Tirita inquires. Yes, she's apparently lost her patience with the sheer amount of outright malice the woman has shown, and now is petitioning for the right to rule upon a singular law within centrist space so as to both protect her peoples and set appropriate precedent. And the law is? Expedited sentencing in cases of extreme lawlessness with clear and present malice and disregard for the damage they cause to others. Genshina says, and Tirita turns that over a bit. She gets it in the first second, but the part she's playing isn't quite so quick. She gives herself a 5-second countdown and then drops the confused, pondering look. That needs to be done carefully. I know you look up to her, Genshina, but she's slithering on a field of razors with this. If she doesn't move perfectly, then she's going to open up the laws for a lot more abuse. Who do you think she is? She is justice manifest. She is careful and cautious in all things. She brings about perfection in all she does. Okay, calm down. I didn't mean insult. Anyways, we need to pay a lot of attention. And I have reports from what I was doing as Sneedly. Where's Lavender? In the back. She's trying to calculate all the possible knock-on effects of a singular law being inserted into all legal codes in and around Centris. Oh, we're not going to see her for a while, are we? Tirita asks. No, Genshina states, and then raises an eyebrow as the jazzy tunes of Tirita's ringtone sound out. You still haven't changed it? It's a catchy song. Yes, and that's the problem, it gets stuck in my head. I'm going to be hearing it all day. Sorry. Tirita apologizes as she looks at the message she was sent. Oh, what is it? A nephew's first just happened. He has 2 new friends now. Confirmed too. So, that's sweet, Tirita says with a smile as underneath it, Harriet understands that next time she debriefs, she's going to learn about some 2 things related to Herbert. As if there isn't enough going on about him. At least this indication was that something positive had happened, and it involved 2 people. Oh, that's excellent, Genshina says with a smile. Still, you may want to just drop off your notes. She's gotten into her 4th roll of yarn and into her 3rd stack of papers. Oh, that's bad, Tirita says before she heads in further, and then pauses at the threshold of where Lavender, her Marega leader, was in the middle of a fugue state as she rushes around with lengths of yarn connecting pegs as she sorts through law. The potential knock-on law, criminals in history, and potential connections to not only each other, but to Basilash as well. The fact that it all ties back to what looks to be a cross between a religious icon and a lawn gnome made in her image has Tirita at a loss for words. She slowly turns back to Genshina. "Where did she get that thing?" she asks, pointing to the crude statue of Basilash that seems to be simultaneously respectful and insulting at the same time, but somehow being neither. "I don't know." "Oh, okay then. The safe money is it being part of a recall she intercepted in her investigations." Genshina notes, leaning in as Tirita stares at Lavender, connecting potential Dark Cabal survivors as targets of the legality expansion as things are now labeled as. "How much time is left until we drag her out for her own good? The announcement wasn't long ago. We still have days on the clock." "Got it," Tirita confirms. "I'm going to sort things and then leave. I don't want to be caught up in this, or more likely, tied up into it. And of course, the new vanishing human subspecies has to be a part of this. It cannot be a coincidence that the purple Vinic nebula flickered at the same time as the massive change to the entire Genelene. It must be a message for us. But what? Oh, but that means they're aware of us, but haven't moved against us in any capacity, and that would also mean that there's further considerations and I need to speak with those three humans again. No doubt there's some kind of advanced reconnaissance team." Lavender rants and Tirita takes mental notes, but physically is backing out of the room slowly. "Yeah, I think it's best you just sort and leave. She's going to be like this for a while," Genshina says as Tirita takes a few pictures of things with her communicator. "Want me to send you updates?" "Sure, if it's not too much a hassle. Are you going to be okay here with her? I mean, don't worry, I've been in this a lot longer. This is concerning but not scary to me," Genshina promises her. Scene change. Private office of Basilash, the unrepentant order, Centris orbit. The link is closed as the Chief Justices have begun their debate. They have never had to discuss such a thing together or in such numbers. It will take them time, so she uncoils from under her desk and shifts around to depart her chamber. There is only a short trip by her perspective, and arrives in the chamber she had set aside for Halissa. The jungle Nagasha, despite being one of the largest Nagasha strains, is still dwarfed utterly next to a fully grown primal, and like all Nagasha, is like a child to her. "Hello, child. Lady Basilash, You are struggling. The balance between holding your person steady and avoiding the destruction of your platform is a difficult one," Basilash says. A single shake of her rattle reassembles the magnetic and padded pillar. "You need to learn to control how you slither, moving in tiny motions. Think of small circles along the length of your tail, or wheels perhaps." "But how is that?" Halisa asks as she watches Lady Basilash slither around the pillar once, and then slowly rise up it as more of her coils wrap around it. But she keeps facing Halisa without her main body shifting position. "Contract and stretch ever so with your movements. It's very unnatural for a Nagasha to move like this. We are used to pressing our coils against our surroundings to push against it. You're pushing more against yourself than anything else. You're barely using any axiom at all. This technique doesn't require axiom, just discipline. Control yourself and you can control your surroundings," Basilash says as she then departs the pillar, lifting herself away from it and setting herself down a distance away, and then pulling her tail back. "Now try again." Halisa nods and slithers up to the pillar, then wraps herself around it and gently, oh so gently, squeezes against it before trying to roll her tail as Basilash had, and click. At the bottom-most part of the pillar disconnects from the rest. There is a shake of Basilash's rattle, and the pillar pulls itself back together. "Try again," she says, and a few moments later, the pillar pulls itself apart with another click. "Maybe you should go back to a stronger pillar again for practice." No, I can do it." "Yes, but if you frustrate yourself, it will only get harder. So go through the motions in an easier setting." Basilash says as she gives another rattle of her tail, and the magnets switch to a stronger setting as they reassemble the pillar. Now, try again. Haliza starts to slowly crawl up the now slightly sturdier pillar, and halfway up there is the slight click of a magnet releasing another magnet, and it starts to fall. She grabs the uppy part of the pilar by reflex, but that's enough to snap another link, and she falls down to the soft map. You need to be calmer. You're just moving from place to place. It's nothing to get excited about or concerned over. It is normal and natural, Basilash offers. Didn't you just say it's unnatural to move like this? Movement itself is perfectly natural, but moving in this way is not. You need OT process that fully to learn to move in differing ways. Like sidewinding. Basilash explains as she uses her coils to shift to the side in a single smooth movement. Hooping is also possible, but much less practical. She still demonstrates by stretching her tail behind her up and forward to let her shift her profile into a gigantic hoop. It does work, but it is not the most comfortable and never a practical way to travel. I understand, but this is more like, think worms. Moving forwards without slithering, but wriggling. It's almost a dance of stretching and contracting. Worms? There are species that evolved from annelids. There is no shame in it. I don't like thinking about worms. They remind me of, do you need to speak with Dr. Hildega? Basilash asks, referencing her psychiatrist. I have a session scheduled for tomorrow. It can wait. Haliza insists. If you are having issues, you should not hold them in and allow it to turn to poison. I know what it feels like to have poison in me. This isn't the same. I can feel them squirming. I was so far gone when you found me, and not because of what Miss Big did. Her name is Juliet Comet. Do not play into her games by using her nickname. She doesn't get to hide behind a pseudonym, not when she is acting so egregiously in bad faith. It's hard to believe the sheer list of everything she's done. I'm surprised that you were surprised. You were one of her victims. She didn't need to hurt you. Attacking you slowed her down and got in the way of her own escape. But she couldn't contain her malice. Oh no, I don't doubt she's a monster, or that she's done bad things. It's just the sheer number and how long she's been at it without getting caught before, Haliza says as she thinks, not to mention the question as to why. The why is likely to be tragically simple. I have seen this before. Someone in a desperate situation or thinking that they found a loophole that makes them smarter successfully completes a crime and are not caught or convicted. And rather than doing the wise thing and deciding not to push their luck, they then do it again, and then keep doing it until they're forcibly stopped. Juliet Comet is only exceptional in that she's been as lucky as she has been vicious, and she was incredibly vicious, and spiteful as well. Is this common? In that this occurs with regularity? Yes. But generally you need populations in the billions or trillions before finding a single case like comets. More aggressive species can accelerate this, of course. But in general, it's only massively populated worlds like Centris that see such a thing with regularity. Into a Wider Galaxy, Part 509. Herbert's 100 Harem and Herald of Red Blades. She takes a breath as she closes the bathroom door to get some privacy. So many people, so many of them seeing her. They were all skilled enough to see a waiver if she was stealthed, but she didn't like being seen. But they could see her. And the babies, they could see her too. Their heads tracked her. She couldn't really tell with the eyes. There's a knock at the door. Hey, you ducked out pretty quickly, Rain. Is something wrong? Velocity asks. Just overwhelmed. Commander. Rain answers. Yeah, I get that too. Velocity says before Rain slams a fist into the counter. No, you don't. You went and you're changing in different ways. But you're still in charge of yourself and not looked down at. And who's looking down at you? Velocity asks. Everyone, I'm a child again. They're treating me like a brat. She starts, then stops herself. It's only been a few months. Just a few months. We're exposed, we're conquered, and yet, what are we anymore? There are more of us out there, but they're trapped as Vish. We change when we have children. Does that mean you're the only fully mature Vishanyan? We were so sure of everything, and now I, I'm not sure of anything. Nothing makes sense anymore, and instead of looking for answers, we're just, Ka. And where do you think the answers are? Velocity asks. What? Where are the answers? Because I don't think the answers are anywhere other than where I am, or the middle of a war zone, Velocity says as Rain sits down. Yeah, that's just the way of it, and she drops her head into her hands and squeezes her skull a little. My brain is boiling in damn hormones and chemicals. I had training and teaching to distract me the first time around, but I'm done my training. I have the experience, and if I train anymore, I'm going to hurt myself. I can't find enough distractions. Oh, hold on a bit. I think I know who you need to talk to. And who would that be? Legally, your uncle. The baseline? I go by Herbert, thank you. Herbert's voice chimes in. Can I come in? If I say no, Rain asks before shifting, as she senses something abruptly next to her and brings out a combat knife. I say too late, Herbert says, ignoring the knife held to his throat. Undaunted standard tri-tight blade. Good stuff. How did you get here so fast? I was already walking over and heard myself being referred to. What's the problem? Herbert asks, and Rain stares at him. How do you see me, Rain asks. It's faint. You're there. I can't see through you, but you're not very visible. It's like something I can't actually see is illuminating you from within. But you can see me, even without your brother's insane battle instincts? Correct, Herbert says. Then your children can too. Yes. Oh, is it so wrong for friend and allies to see you? We're not. I mean, the fact that we are allies is so strange, she says. Oh, believe me, I understand strange and rapid change. I was a standard soldier when we exited cruel space. A low-ranked runner sent to prod at the arrangement systems and see how they react. Then I got caught up in political nonsense that saw me massively married. I panicked, nearly killed myself in an escape attempt, and was reduced to a child to stay alive. Oh, and I didn't know it at the time, but my DNA was then stolen and massively copied to give me literally billions of clones. And boy, wasn't that a revelation. Yeah, but you're a super soldier with stealth that makes mine look, well, the training was mostly conditioning, so beyond reflexes and knowledge, which was limited to basic modern engineering and galactic trade and some other useful bits. I could still use a gun, but I needed to relearn just how much kick the weapons had on my new, weaker body. And until recently, the stealth was me just looking boring. Not vanishing from sight, not disappearing. Just looking kind of boring. People still saw things, but they didn't lose track of me, Herbert says. But yeah, being young again does suck. Sure, being smaller makes it easier to hide in places. But it's hard to get respect when I'm barely up to someone's stomach. Yeah, but being seen isn't a danger for you, Rain says. Do you know what I do on slow days when I'm on field duty? What? Pedophile bait, he answers, and she stares at him. Or rather, jail bait. I do a lot of work as a distraction because without the family stealth, I'm irresistible. I have had riots started because some women were no longer able to resist the urge to grab me, and then others had their protective instincts twang off that. And the end result is multiple women in the hospital and more. Believe it or not, I got that to kick off even before we knew that there was something more than just a loss of appeal to the family looks. Really? Oh yeah, and anyways, all that is to say that I get it when you say there's been a lot of change and it's hard to adjust. I get it. I really do. So does Harold. But with him pushing to be your father? Would you have done something different? Yes, but only because the circumstances are so different. I really don't think you'd be willing to put up with anything with most of my wives being around the same age chronologically that you are now physically. We would reach levels of sass and mutual backtalk unseen in recent history. Centris itself would be at risk of falling into a sass singularity and being rendered incapable of performing, its function as the political heart of the galaxy, Herbert says dramatically. Sai, she doesn't take the bait and he gives her a disappointed look. What? You were supposed to say, so it would be business as usual then? Or something to that effect. I set you up for a good zinger there, he says, and she blows a raspberry at him. That looks kind of funny with a forked tongue. How detailed is your off-site or whatever it's called? It's really weird, and to be honest, people look weird in it. A lot of the way we recognize people is in the way shadows cross them, right? I guess. But if they're the light source, it looks off. I'm told this is how peoples with both ultraviolet and thermal vision can see people, but still different. It has no color preference. Harold describes it as a contrast he can't see that makes everything stand out. That is it, but the source of it is mostly light that erases the shadows. It's kind of funny, but a person can look almost totally different from their own picture because a picture doesn't have that trait. Really? I thought it was different with that woman who moved through the picture. Oh, please don't bring that up. My department and I worked ourselves halfway into insanity trying to figure out how to defend from an information-based entity that moved through instances of its own image. Did you get any answers? Judicious use of explosives and fires to destroy whatever data they're on, then get the data again after it's gone. Your answer was to burn down the house you're in? Rain asked with a bit of a giggle. I didn't say we got good answers for it. I'm picturing you running around and screaming as you try and burn them out of your systems. The panicked screaming is optional but encouraged. Herbert confirms and Rain snorts before letting herself laugh a bit. Feel better? A bit, thanks. Your family now, anytime, anywhere, and for any reason, Herbert says. Scene change. Private office of Bazalish, the unrepentant order, Centrus orbit. And that's the end of it. We have the permission. Jalasi states, and above her, Lady Bazalish nods once. She takes in a deep breath. We have the cameras prepared. Good. Let us see to it then. Have you reviewed my proposition? Every Chief Justice on Centrus, and likely the lesser justices and judges have read it as well. I would be shocked if half the lawyers in system weren't memorizing it as we speak. Were there some form of mistake upon it? It would have been long pointed out by now. No, it wouldn't have, Bazalish notes sadly. My lady, I am a primal. The assumption is that mistakes are one of the things I am not capable of, even though I demonstrably can. If I had left a loophole or a legal fumble, most would assume it deliberate on my part, or possibly an act from my dear cousin. Do you think she would? She slithers through the cracks to create what she needs to not only support the existing systems, but to make enormous profit in the process. It is both a passion and a game to her, rearranging the galaxy to serve her while making it serve itself, Bazalish states. She really is your opposite face, my lady. Oh, you are not wrong, but how do you regard us as opposites? Well, you are two faces of the same benign coin, but where you prefer order, she prefers chaos, and you both prefer it referred to under different terms. Justice and freedom. An interesting perspective. But you both have hard limits. You loathe making new laws and do all you can to only enforce existing laws, no matter how inefficient or impractical. And Lady Rikaxa has a strict code where non-combatants and children are kept out of her dealings, which is much the same thing. Laws work under consent in most jurisdictions, and most of Rikaxa's game pieces consent to be in her game. Quite the interpretation. You're also both quite motherly in your own way. Each child you take under your care deeply cared for and attended to in order to forge living legends. Where she has many daughters that she has little time for all of them, but she encourages their growth in their own paths, even the few Jingai she has had. Is there a point you're getting to? Just surprised. It always surprises me when it's in front of my face again, Jalasi says, and after a moment, Bazalish smiles lightly. That's understandable. I often find myself surprised at how often such pairings or groupings happen among my fellow primals. The similarities between Queen Halcyona and Emperor Skitterway are shocking, but with just enough differences to make them stand out. The great Nagasha Queen and the Urthani Emperor both faced an ageless evil that had haunted their world. But where Halcyona was unable to kill hers and redeemed her instead, the Earthani Emperor personally forced his own with his own claws. Halcyona had trained her whole life to face her foe, born a primal just for that task. But Skitterway, he became a primal for the task alone, and solely to get back to the task. Then who does the first Wimpero's primal, Lady Great Pincer, pair with? Grandmother. Both come from humble origins and yearning for a family. But where grandmother had a disgusting but necessary job, Great Pincer has a sweet-smelling but frivolous one. Both want large families, but where grandmother had none to start with, Great Pincer has already been part of a large family and broke away to start anew. Both also ended up adopting, although the reactions were opposite as well. Halcyona did not take kindly to grandmother trying to claim her as her own, but the Vishanian insight took very well to Great Pincer's adoption of her. There's also the opposite in that grandmother has deliberately erased her original name, and Claudia Great Pincer's name is ringing through the galaxy as we speak, Jelassi states. Very true, Basilash admits, and then raises an eyebrow as Jelassi suddenly gets an amused look. What? It could also be argued that with Uncle Love, there's a three-way going on in Reflections in that he's the opposite of both of you. Let us not speak of threesomes and the beast lest we summon him and his ever-bleeding heart. My lady, he was last seen heading to Lacran 297. If one does not know his exact location, then one should be cautious of spontaneous and unwanted hugs at all times. Jelassi just smiles as the memory assails her. Please stop thinking about the last time he interrupted my duties with a hug and a gift. But it's funny. Into a Wider Galaxy, Part 510. Meanwhile, at the lab. So it all boils down to the females. The lining of the egg cells slow down the males producing sperm by an immense amount compared to the female producing sperm. The doctor explains as they go over the notes again. There are even several slides showing things as they happen. That's very interesting and does match up with what you sent back. But have you really found nothing else in the field since? All we've done is confirm what is already wildly known to the galaxy at large, to anyone that cares to study the details of the subject. And no, we haven't gotten spontaneously lucky and found some magic secret. The closest we have is the creation of a cream that nearly guarantees male children. But even that is something that has been discovered in the past and has been, for one reason or another, never grown in popularity. What's the most common reason? Simply put, it has the side effect of lowering the chance of conception, and it was often used by women who were using sperm donations to impregnate themselves, which means it would only take rarely. The creme is more of a tool to use when the male is eager and willing, as Mr. Jameson has proven. I find it rather interesting that he is, or rather was, so willing now that I have reviewed the record on him. After his initial reaction to them, I would suspect he would have a hard time performing, Observer Wu says. Did you think to ask him yourself, sir? I have an appointment with him later, but until then, I'm afraid I have only speculation. Tell me, how much or how little do you expect him to differ from his clone? I ask out of scientific curiosity. A fair amount. Harold underwent a crisis of self before settling and finding his balance. Even in casual conversation, he says he's the more battle-hungry between himself and Herbert. But the sheer amount of absurdity that he gets up to on the casual is words fail. Speaking of words failing, there is something you need to see. Oh? You know how the Jamesons have that weird thing with their... The doctor begins before gesturing to their face. The markings. Well, no, not that. Well, kinda. We were made aware of it at the same time. The stealth ability, where you can't even pull his face out of a crowd of one? Yes, what of it? We found more. Excuse me? Well, we think it's more. Two, in fact. One of our snipers, Specialist Vlad Roch, and the other is a medic by the name of Officer Christos Ekmekchi. What of them? Both men have been proven to possess extrasensory abilities, almost like some sort of counter or relative to the Jameson sensory occluding abilities. It's very subtle, but also is provably accurate. We've tested it with the children of both men, human and otherwise, they all have it. What are these abilities? Specialist Vlad Rach is aware of being observed at all times. The Romani man just knows. And he's been like this his whole life. He thought it was completely normal to be able to tell if someone can see you. He needed it to be outright explained to him that it was not normal. And this is also the case with our man from Istanbul, Ch.506-510. He can flawlessly tell what he's carrying, and it's conditioned at all times. You hand him a jar of 1,000 beads with numbers on it and tell him to pull out a specific one, he can do it. That was a little harder to test in his newborns, but test it we did. These traits passed to all their children. And Mr. Jameson, Mr. Harold Jameson's firstborn child is a Vishanian, a species already geared towards supernatural stealth capabilities. He's double-dipped, Observer Wu considers. It's harder to test with the Jamesons. By their own reckoning, their abilities awaken roughly around puberty and grow afterwards. But with the fact that Herbert was almost forced backwards through it, and the implications that those markings and whatever strange energies they're manipulating, it's a lot. There's also the implication that these supernatural abilities might be powered by that energy source. Can it be quantified and measured without breaking the equipment? All signs point to no so far. How have you tested the newborns? Oh, that's easy. For the Rat's children, we have 2 tests, and we watch where they look. One is a small wall with many cameras embedded in it. We use an algorithm to deactivate and reactivate the cameras, and then we note if the child's eyes track the cameras. The answer is yes. It never takes more than 2 seconds for the newborns to make direct eye contact with the camera lens. And the second test? We use a one-way mirror with decorations in a room with them, and then we have a single observer move around as they track the babe's own head and eye movements. As long as you can see them, the baby can see you. It's very interesting. I see, and how do you test this object awareness with babes? We have a small box with 10 balls inside it. The balls are too big to fit in the child's mouth, but all can be opened and 3 of them have treats in them. When we hold the box, the babe has no idea about the treats unless they grab one of the treat balls at random. But when we put the box in their lap, they instantly reach in and start pulling out the treat-filled balls to get at the snack. They do this without fail. We change the number of treats, number of balls, mark them, and recolor them in all sorts of different ways. And we have found that we cannot fool them that way. If they are somehow carrying something, then Ekmekshi knows about it intimately. It's fascinating. When those children grow up, they are going to be shoes in for the scientific fields. Then why is Medical Officer Christos Ekmekshi not part of your research department? Personal aptitude, he prefers to spend his time healing and running around with weaponry. Does he have similar abilities with the injured when in his care? Say carrying someone on a stretcher? Observer Wu asks. We asked him about that. The answer is a resounding, if disappointing, no. But he can sense what they're wearing if he carries them. We tested it by having him pick up various research assistants, and he was able to tell us what was in everyone's pockets or tucked into their socks without looking. So the man can do a weapon scan by picking someone up. That's interesting. And Rods can know instantly if he's being followed or hunted. Observer Wu finishes. This is something that needs to be tested on the families of these men back on Earth. Specialist Rash was reared by his maternal grandparents. His father's side of the family, barring an uncle young enough to be his older brother, was tragically killed in a car accident. However, Medic Mekshi has a large family up to, and including still living great-grandparents and numerous siblings. Still, it's a lot to think about. Observer Wu considers before a research assistant runs into the room. Doctor? Observer Wu, sir? You both need to turn that screen to the local news channels. You just missed it. But it's going to be on repeat for a while. What is? Observer Wu asks as the doctor activates a touch function to the screen next to them, and the image shifts. An enormous dark blue Nagasha woman with the distinctive hood of the primals. Stylash, she finishes her initial statement. I understand that this is an unusual announcement, but these are unusual times. Upon your world there has been a case of law, breaking so egregious that we have long passed the point of sheer ludicrousness. I do not like adding to or altering the laws of others. These are the agreements that you have all held in sacred trust with one another, and my place is not as the creator of such laws, but the arbiter and enforcer. Though if things truly as I prefer it, then merely as an observer or potential expert to consult. However, in this case, something unique has happened, several times no less. The perpetrator has provably committed sufficient criminal acts that they would have had numerous judges in the past pass out the maximum sentence multiple times. In totality, I have discovered that the perpetrator of the case in which I am forced to try them in absentia due to their sheer flight risk qualifies for the maximum sentencing 9 times over, and evidence of further wrongdoing is still arriving. In light of this, I have, with the permission of the Chief Justices of Centris, have determined that a new law to function within all of the Centris system is required for the vast majority of the population. This regulation will never come up. It is in effect to your lives a single line of code and will generally mean even less. However, in cases such as the one I am currently dealing with, it will allow expedition, but only under strict and stringent circumstances. In effect, once a case of sufficient evidence and provable malice has been established to exceed the maximum sentencing, where life imprisonment, reversion, or execution would be required multiple times, the case can be expedited with the agreement of 10 other Chief Justices in good standing. Basilash explains. The purpose of this law is plain, as is its strict requirements. However, to ensure there is no misunderstanding, I shall explain my reasoning. To put it simply, time is valuable. In cases where the evidence is all clear, when there is little room for debate, and you are not alone in this, then one can go ahead. Now, I have placed a heavy burden onto this form of ruling. It will require 10 Chief Justices to enact to prevent the law from being taken advantage of, she states, then her eyes narrow. Not that I am ignorant of the fact that there will be those among you that will find a way to either take advantage of this new law or adjust it to suit your own sensibilities. Such is the nature of law, it shifts and churns alongside the society that created it. I fully expect this law to either be used so little that it will become some nigh-forgotten relic, or abused so thoroughly that it will be unrecognizable before the end of the decade. Once again, this new law is that once an individual has substantive evidence against them that would cause them to receive the maximum penalty under the law at least twice, their sentencing can be expedited with the agreement of 10 Chief Justices in good standing. It is my hope that this alteration to the law will not be required outside of this single, specific case of extreme lawlessness and malice. The reason for this change is that I have been honestly and deeply disgusted by the sheer number of outright cruelty and criminality on display. As part of my sentencing, I am going to require the perpetrator to undergo a full scan biologically. I fully expect there to be some form of deformity in her brain, somehow suppressing her ability to act without some form of incredible lawlessness and brutality. Regardless, I apologize for my weakness. I am supposed to be better than this. Interfering with and altering the lives of others with little regard for my own comfort and desire. Basilash says, and her image starts to waver. What the? She's not done. The assistant asks before the image shifts to show another Nagasha with the primal hood, giving the camera a wry and amused look. Basilash, dear cousin, relax. You're allowed to look out for yourself. Existence isn't only duty and the standards you hold yourself to. You can take care of yourself. I promise no one will look down on you for it. Wake up from nap, save cousin from herself, go back to sleep, Rikaxa says, and then the image wavers back again to Bazalsh. Justices. Therefore, the decision can be reversed by the Chief Justices of the spires as well. Should we reach the halfway point of all spires and plates of Centris rejecting this new legal standard, then it shall be automatically repealed.